Hey guys, welcome back. So today I wanted to do a little instructional video on how I test a Coleman lantern before I buy it. This particular one is a Coleman model 220F, but this is going to work for the 200A and all the similar models. The reason I wanted to do this is because I wanted something kind of comprehensive, a little checklist that you can go through with everything that you can actually check while this is in the store. Because the store owner is not going to let you start taking things apart and monkeying around with it, so there's only so much that you can do. So hopefully I'm thorough enough that this is going to answer a lot of questions for you and it's going to help you out. So the first thing that you want to do obviously is just a visual inspection. You want to make sure that all the parts are there. There's a generator tube in there, burner assembly, okay, the collar, the knob is on there. It does have a fuel cap here, or a fount cap, whichever one you want to call it. It does have a pump assembly. And you got the bail handle, okay, you've got this little top nut here. Okay, everything appears to be here. Now just give it a once over. Look especially on the bottom of the fount. The reason why you want to do this, for one, is to see what date that it was made. Because on all these they're going to have a month and a year when they were made. So this one was made in 9/66. Now if you happen to find one that was made in the same month and year that you were born, that's called your birthday lantern. So you should probably go ahead and buy that one because it's already calling your name. Birthday lanterns have a special significance to collectors, but it's just one thing that you can look for. The main thing you want to look at is to see if there's any rusty spots that appear to be rusted all the way through. You're going to find rust, you're going to find missing paint. That's normal. That's just normal wear and tear. You're probably not going to get away from that. But you want to make sure you don't see any holes. Another thing that you want to look for is dents. Generally, dents in the fount do not affect function, but if it's not something that you can live with, then don't get it because it's impossible to fix. Now the next thing you want to look at is the vent cap here. Now this, it's normal to see a little bit of rust on there. That's fine. The fount you can actually repaint if you want to. The vent cap you can't. So there's no getting around that. However that looks is pretty much how it's going to look, because that has a porcelain coating on there. You can try to paint over it, but really no paint is really going to stay. So if that's not something that you can live with, if that has a big old dent in it, it has a big rusty spot that you don't like, the only way around that is to get another one. So once we give it a good once over, we see everything's there, nothing's rusted through, nothing is dented too bad. Now we just want to see if everything that we can monkey around with is okay to be monkeyed around with. So everything that should move freely, we got to check. So the first thing is this fount cap. Make sure that moves. Alright, next thing is this little lever here. That should turn freely in both directions. Okay, it does. Your fuel knob should turn freely. And if you turn it all the way clockwise, it should close and stop. Your pump assembly here, you should be able to pull it out. You should be able to push it in. And it should be able to twist to the right and close, or left, and it should spin and open. And the nut on top of your vent here, you should be able to turn that. Okay, so that's everything that can be moved. So we've just established that everything that should move does move. So the next thing we do is get a little bit more in depth. Now keep in mind, I have a reason for doing things in this order, and you'll see why at the end. So the next thing we do, come back to the fount cap here, open that all the way up, and give a good visual inspection on the inside of the fount. It helps to have a flashlight, but the main thing you're looking for in there is to see if you have fuel. A lot of times people will leave fuel in there, and it's something that you just want to be aware of. It's not a deal breaker. If you see fuel in there, you're probably going to see that it's old and it's got some rust floating around on it, and it's probably real nasty looking, but just be aware if it's there. So, in this one, I know there is no fuel in there because I've drained it. So now, get that fuel cap on there and turn it firmly. It doesn't have to be, oh my god, I'm going to need a pair of pliers to get this thing off tight, but it does need to be firmly tight. Okay? Make sure your fuel adjustment knob here is turned all the way to the right. Now we're going to move on to the next step, which is checking the pump. So as you see, this moves out, it moves in. Make sure it's twisted all the way to the right and that it's closed. Now this has a hole right here. You're going to want to put your thumb over that hole. Give it a quarter turn counterclockwise, and that should open it up and allow you to pump air. So as you're pumping, it should feel like a small bicycle pump. You should have a little bit of resistance as air is moving down in there. So if you're trying to do this and you can't push it in, if it's not pumping at all, then your problem is that your check valve is stuck shut. That's kind of a deal breaker if you're just the average Joe looking for a lantern in good working order, because the check valve is hard to work on. If it's just kind of slow and sluggish, you can take this pump assembly out whenever you get home, squirt some carburetor cleaner in there, and that should clean it out. Usually what happens is old fuel varnishes and it gunks up the check valve. But you mainly want to make sure that you are pumping air in there, that you can feel some resistance. Okay, I feel some resistance. And give it a good 20-25 pumps or more. If you have fuel in here, you may not be able to get that many pumps in. Okay, now with your thumb still over the hole in the end of the pump assembly, give it another quarter turn clockwise to close the valve. Okay, now that's closed. Now the first thing that you want to do is get your ear right here next to that fount cap. See the fount cap? You're listening to see if any air is leaking out of there. If you do have air leaking out of here, that's usually an easy fix. That's just the fount cap gasket has worn out. That's normal. Okay? Getting back to the pump assembly here, if it moves completely freely and it's not pumping any air at all, which is about 50% of the time with these old lanterns, that means there's something wrong with your pump cup. Normally, the only thing that you need to do is oil it, and it'll come back to life. They need to stay hydrated. The early ones, like this one, has a leather pump cup. And if you were to take this out and look at it, if it's dried out, it won't be able to seal and it won't be able to pump any air. But if you took that out and you rubbed some oil in it, just regular household 3-in-1 oil, it should come back to life. If it doesn't, you can try soaking it in oil overnight. If that still doesn't hydrate it enough to seal, then you need a new pump cup. You can either get online and order a new leather pump cup, or you can retrofit it to one of the newer models that has a rubber and nylon pump cup. But it does have to stay lubricated to work. But like I said, about 50% of the time these have been neglected by the time people are selling these, and you'll have to do a little work on that. If it's not pumping any air at all, then your test is done. You know that you have to work on that before you can do anything else. So now we've listened. We've established that there is no air coming out of here. So that's good. That means the gasket is actually sealing. To make sure, we're going to crack that back open. And it should sound like you're opening a soda can when you get that tss. So let's give it a listen. Okay, I don't know if you could hear that very well, but it did. It sounded just like opening up a soda can. So that tells us that the fount is capable of holding pressure. It also tells us that your pump assembly is working, it is pumping air. The check valve is allowing air to go into the fount. Fount's holding pressure and the gasket is holding too. So again, close that cap. Make sure your fuel knob is closed. Give it a couple more pumps. Again, pump until you feel some resistance. 10, 20, 30 pumps. Doesn't really matter. Like I said, if you have fuel in there, it's going to take less pumps. When you start to feel the elasticity of the air inside the fount, that means you can't pump it anymore because no more air fits in there. You're not going to blow any seals or anything doing this. It's kind of impossible to do it too much if you're just testing it. Okay. Now close it again. Now with that many pumps in it, if there's any leaks, you should hear it. I don't hear any leaks, so all of our fittings should be good on here. I don't hear any air coming out anywhere, so that's good. It's passed that test. So the next thing that we do is check to make sure that the valve assembly is working. To do that, we're going to crack this fuel adjustment knob. Just 1/4 turn counterclockwise. Now if you have fuel in here, this is why you need to be aware of that. Now the fount is pressurized. If I turn this, the first thing that's going to come up through here is air. But if I leave it open too long, more than 20 or 30 seconds, then fuel is going to start coming through here and cycling through there, and it's going to start dripping out of the burner assembly. And old fuel has a special odor that nobody likes to smell. And it's a good idea to not drip fuel everywhere to begin with. So just keep that in mind. You're just going to crack this open and you're going to listen for the air to go through the burner assembly. Also, if you have one of these little knobs right here, one of these little generator knobs, make sure that's facing in the down position. On the 220, it's going to look just like this, because this is a 220. On a model 200A, this is going to look a little bit different, and it's going to be positioned on the very back of the collar. But again, make sure it's facing down. So crack that 1/4 return, listen for the air to flow through. Okay, I hear the air flowing through. See if I can get you close enough to hear it. Okay. Alright. So now we've established that there is a clear path from the fount into the valve assembly and up into the burner assembly. Now we know that the fuel air tube inside the fount is at least somewhat functional. So the next thing we do, give it a couple more pumps. Oh. Okay. By the way, if you don't have one of these little generator knobs on here, your test is pretty much done. That's about all that you can test. If you have a newer model that doesn't have one of these little knobs right here, yeah. Let me give you a close-up. Okay, see what I'm talking about? This that moves around. If you don't have one of those, then your test is done because you can't test anymore. But if you do have one, because you have a model 220 or 200A or something else similar to that, then we're going to move on to test this. What this is just a little lever that goes inside the valve assembly, and it's attached to an eccentric block. Whenever you move this, it moves the eccentric block up and down. Now attached to that eccentric block is a small needle inside the generator tube. I'll point that out. Okay. This here is your generator tube. I'll give you a side view because here, now you can really see it. Okay, that there, generator tube. And inside of that is a needle attached to the eccentric block, and there's a little pricker on the top of that needle that attaches to an orifice on the top of the generator. So whenever you move this, that moves everything up and down on the inside of there that cleans out that little generator. Okay? So whenever we open this, we should hear air flowing up through here, into here, back up here and down through the mantles. But if we turn this up, it should shut off the flow of air. We shouldn't hear any more air flowing. So let's try it. Okay, I hear the air going. You turn that up, the air stops. Okay, hopefully you can hear that on the camera. Alright, so now we've established that your pump assembly is functioning, the check valve on the inside of that is functioning, the fount is functioning, the cap is functioning, the fuel air tube on the inside is functioning, the valve assembly is functioning, the eccentric block is functioning, the generator is functioning, and at least to some extent the burner assembly here is functioning. That's as much as you can test in the store. So hopefully that gives you guys some food for thought. Now, just because a lantern passes all of these tests does not necessarily mean for sure that the lantern will work whenever you get it home. But a lantern that is in good working order will pass all these tests. So there are some things that this won't tell you, such as if the burner tubes here are clogged up, maybe you got dirt dauber nests in there, there's a chance that fuel may not flow through there freely, or you may not get enough oxygen in there. All this tests is that there is some oxygen flowing through there. So again, it's not 100%, but it's as best as you can do, and it does give you a pretty good idea of what may need to be repaired on it. So I hope that helps you out.